Ranjith, class of 2002 alumni, and he should be on the screen soon. There he is.
Definitely feels a little surreal talking to all of you through this video conferencing medium. However, I'm glad to be here and talking about the subject of how I can help share some of my experiences. Having been in your shoes, I was going to say not too long ago, but it has been fairly a bit of time, right? It's been about 18 years since I've been back to school, specifically St. Anthony. So it's nice to kind of see and share some of those experiences that I've used all throughout my career. And my hope is that I can impart some learnings that I've taken and used that have helped me. And in doing so, I can start a dialogue that doesn't necessarily need to end today, but can kind of take on different shapes and forms with different interests that any of you may have. So a little bit about me. I currently work at Amazon Alexa as their head of experience data. What that means is I lead a group of data engineers who bring all of the data that is being churned out and computed when you utter words into your Alexa devices so that we can deliver better experiences. So all the way from understanding how best to service you as a consumer, or how best to determine the proximity and the enhancements associated with the algorithm. All of that comes from that work. And prior to that, I was the global head of data platforms and data services at a large-scale pharmaceutical, GlaxoSmithKline. And prior to that, I was over at Samsung Electronics leading their data program. I started off in mobile, then moved over into apps, and then eventually into consumer electronics, rolling up into the head of strategy. So I've had a lot of different roles, jobs, whatever you want to call it, within the intersection of data, technology, and analytics. I actually started off my career at USAA, where I was an intern for about a year, and moved over into a full-time role in their IT department. Started off as a database administrator, and then over the next 5 years got promoted several times over, and then quickly reached into the architectural ranks, where I was responsible for designing and architecting the financial advice solutions that was being provided to tons of our members. At that point, it was about 6.5 million members, but then used on a fairly regular basis, again, at that time, at about 15,000 member service representatives who would use those applications and then drive it forward. And then I had a short stint at Whataburger, where I was leading their business intelligence technology solutions and driving that forward. Now, all of this seems great and super illustrious. However, the path to get there wasn't easy, right? And so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what that was, and kind of give you some of my learnings that I've taken away from that journey getting there. So step one is I moved to the US when I was about 17 years old, senior year of high school, and sure enough, came to St. Anthony, and found my time there to be extremely useful. And in hindsight, it gave me a lot of the thinking styles that I needed to get to the first leap. The first leap for me was getting into college, which at that point, the systems were different. So when we moved from the Middle East, I was originally from India, but then I had moved over to the Middle East, and then moved from the Middle East over to the United States. This concept of a heavy set educational program where you have to spend money upfront with high tuition wasn't really accounted for. And we came from really humble beginnings. In fact, I lived downtown. I took 2 buses to get to school. And we didn't have much, the apartment was fairly tiny. And so there was no avenue for me to really get to college. And what I ended up doing was doubling down on dual credit programs, which Mrs. Moreno tells me that you all still have, and has grown into something that's bigger. I used that as an avenue to get my first merit scholarship, and that I got into I got into San Antonio College as a result of that, and then, kind of progressed my way through. And as I was doing that, I lost focus, lost my scholarship, had to bring that back up. And that therein lies the first lesson. And I think as I think through that, a lot of times as I was kind of sitting in college doing different stuff, I constantly was thinking about how am I going to crack the secret of making more money. And to me, it was about working two jobs and getting enough so that your needs are being met. And what I quickly realized was, your income ability without with a degree considerably increases on average, right? The world is obviously changing, and things are being taken a look at in a different lens now in comparison to where it was before. But that was a big learning for me, because what that meant was quit sacrificing longer term gain for short term needs, and that was a good lesson for me to learn. And so I finished my education over at the University of Texas San Antonio, got a bachelor's in science and electrical engineering, and then as I was doing that, I wanted to line up the job that I had in college to my overall goal, which was enriching and trying to understand engineering, right? Because I didn't like 18 years ago when I was in your shoes, I knew I was going to go to college because my parents told me that again and again. But what I didn't know was what I was going to do. And somehow everybody around me thought engineering was a good answer. So I didn't have a better one. So I went in and did that. But year one through the program, I had no clue. I didn't know what it meant. Year two through the program, I kind of sort of started to get a feel for it. And what I started to understand was the only going to know what it is if you start doing the job. And obviously you can't do the job without the competency. So you have to shadow people and understand what the job is. And so you have to talk to a lot of people. And I was lucky enough to where I got a job over in the research lab at school, and started to understand what research in electrical engineering would look like. What are the kinds of problems that they're trying to solve? Whether it was low pass filter design, whether it was passing secret messages and images, whether it was taking a look at radiology images and figuring out what are cancer cells or not. So started to get super jazzed about a lot of these things. And therein lies the second big learning, which is line up the jobs that you have to your overall goal. And I think that kind of helps you decipher what is needed, and kind of helps you think about what the next steps are, because you're a more informed consumer. And that's super important to get out there. And as I progressed through this, I got my, like I said, I got my internship at USAA. And I remember, like in day one, leading up to day one, I found out that I was going to be making $18 an hour. And I was like, oh boy, $18. I mean, like, this is fantastic. I had only seen, I think at that time, I think the highest rate that I had seen was probably like $4.30 or 50 cents. I don't remember, but it was less than $5. And so this was like a leap, this was like, boy, 3 times that, right? 3 points, sometimes that. So day one, I, went in and they're like, hey, you know what, we need you to enter these items into an Excel spreadsheet. And I did that all day. And I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, they don't need to pay me $18 to do this. So I went in and I talked to my then boss, and I said, listen, you're overpaying me. I don't think you need to pay me this much to do this. And she was obviously a little confused. And she asked me to go back, and she said, listen, she was like, just enjoy the process of getting to know what USAA does, and understand what corporate life is. And that's what we really look for in terms of you interns. It's not that you have to change the world right now, just focus and just try to get acclimated. And I wasn't happy with that answer. So what I ended up doing was, over the next 8 months, I ended up automating a lot of the processes that I was doing manually. and secured a job. But at the same time, I earned the trust of the people around me. And that helped me throughout my career at USA. Um, because with that credibility, it opens up a few more doors, and then you're able to do other things that you really want to do, and shape the strategy of where things are headed. So therein lies the third big thing, right? I mean, chase the big things, right? Don't let people tell you, that you got to hedge one way or the other. I mean, it is what you make it to be, and those things are super important. And you kind of want to feel that and drive it forward. Now, the last kind of piece that I talk about is my journey from Samsung Electronics over to GlaxoSmithKline. Um, I had been recruited into Samsung, and I was sitting there, trying to figure out how best to kind of drive their strategy forward. And I was responsible for their first personalization program on .com. That way you can get in, and when you get on Black Friday and you see a deal for a TV, a lot of the work that I did brought up recommendations for other things that you can buy on Samsung.com. And I was having a great time. And my then mentor, who was the chief data officer over at Samsung North America, had moved over to GlaxoSmithKline. For those of you who don't know, GlaxoSmithKline is a global pharmaceutical company that is currently driving one of the components of the vaccine. In fact, our previous head of pharma, vaccines, not pharma, sorry, vaccines, is spearheading the whole journey within Operation Warp Speed. So they've had a lot of history in pharmaceuticals. And so his statement to me was over dinner. He was trying to convince me to move over, and he asked me, "Hey, how are things going down there?" And I told him I'm having a great time, enjoying a lot of success, and this is what people want, right? You want to do things and you want to learn. And I'll never forget what he asked me. He said, "Listen, do you want to sell cell phones for the rest of your life, or do you want to come and change the way that we drive medicine?" And who could say no, right? And so I obviously said, "Yep, you know what, I'm coming." And things changed. I did tell him, however, that I needed his help and support to drive out the next phase of my development, which was I had always had this vision of wanting to get an MBA. And the more that I spent time in STEM, I knew that having a business background was super important. And I wanted to not just do it at any school. I wanted to go to MIT Sloan. And having him as a mentor and knowing that he sat on various different boards, I said, I need your personal help and attention in getting me there. And sure enough, after a couple of failed attempts, I got in, and through GSK's graces, they paid for it. And that kind of led to another career and got me to where I'm at Amazon. So therein lies the last piece of what I'll talk about, which is really about, when I think about career choices, and when I think about, choices of degrees that you need to get, I think about it in three specific ways, or three variables, you can call it. I'm not one who says follow your passion and follow it blindly, because I think that's one facet of it. For me, it's about, do you have the ambition, which comes from having the passion to drive stuff forward, because no one's going to tell you to wake up at 5 a.m. and do what you need to do, right? Because sadly, as you grow up, things around you kind of change. The second is, do you have the competency and the skills to go drive it forward? And are you building that along the way? The third is there a market for those skills that can be monetized effectively? So a good way to think about it is, if you're trying to break through in the music industry and you're trying to be a bass player, ask yourself the question, do you have the skills and the competency? And are you competitive within your realm of possibility? Second, is there a market for that skill out there where you can monetize it? And are you okay with that monetization? Are you okay getting paid $3,000 a gig, or whatever the market price is? And do you have the ambition to get over the hurdles to make sure that it comes true? And if all of those things match up, then it's a good choice. You should go forward with that. That's the way I look at it. And I mean, I've used this kind of thinking style to break through different items. At one point, I really wanted to be a cricket player. Obviously, you know, India's got 1 billion people or close to it. There's no way that I was going to be successful. So, so I look at it in different ways, right? I mean, I contribute to different things and kind of position it differently. So overall, in summary, I think before we open it up to questions, which I would love to kind of answer and kind of drive out with y'all, is as y'all are thinking about your next steps, about whether it's career, whether it's about, you know, the classes you need to take, or whether it's about, you know, a degree that you're eventually going to get. You know, don't be afraid to think big. You know, like if some of you sitting in the crowd are thinking, you know, like, oh, I'm just going to do X, take it to the next level. Think about Y, Z, W. It's as big as you kind of want it to be. The second thing is, and I think this goes a little, this is not said as often, but if you're interested in doing something, go seek out people who are already doing that one thing, right? And I'm pretty sure if you look hard enough, there will be people in your network, somebody who, you know, who your friends know, their parents know, their mentors know, or their teachers know, somebody, right? And seek them out, get advice, and get it early, so that you can develop your path, so that you can determine what to do and how to do it, and learn from their wisdom, right? Because I think that that's super important. And the last thing is, don't sacrifice long-term goals for short-term gain. And that's something that I always keep in mind, because it's super easy, right? It's super easy to kind of look at something and get that here and now fix. But the longer term gain is kind of where you got to look at and keep thinking through it. So anyways, hopefully this was a little enriching, little insightful. And I mean, happy to take questions, happy to even connect with a lot of you offline as well, if there's other stuff that I can help and provide guidance and insight on.
Thank you so much for this. I love that you are wearing that St. Anthony t-shirt that we can see. And thank you so much for being with us this morning. Let's give him a round of applause for all of this great insight.